Hello everyone, back tuning into today's video. I've got a big video for you today because it is the first winter 2018-19 update from Anomaly.com. So I've been building up to this over the past couple of months. We released the NAO forecast for the winter of 2018-19 on the 1st of July. Got to get that to 22,000 video views. It's currently around 21,000, just underneath 21,000 at the moment. Got to get 22,000 video views to make it the most watched video that I've ever recorded since I began doing all this back in 2012. So we are quite close to having our most watched video ever at Anomaly. So another 1,000 and we'll be there. But we released the NAO forecast on the 1st of July. And that's kind of like the first step, if you like, on the road to the winter updates. But it's always at the beginning of September that the real winter updates get going. When we look at things like sea surface temperature, anomalies, solar activity, analogues, QBO, and more. So this is your first winter 2018-19 update. There are going to be 13 of these updates. Every Sunday we're going to do a winter update, as well as 3 season model roundups that would be released on the last Saturdays of September, October and November as well. So going to be a huge season of updates coming up for you this year at Anomaly. I can tell you that the date of the winter 2018-19 forecast is already penciled in. So that date will be Sunday, the 2nd of December. We'll be releasing the Anomaly.com winter 2018-19 forecast on Sunday, the 2nd of December. So between now and then, the updates will build up the picture forensically. We'll go through everything, building up the storyline for this winter, and then eventually when we get to the end of November, beginning of December, we'll bring it all together and we'll combine our methodology with long-range season models, and then that will be the winter forecast that will release on the 2nd of December. So, exciting times, and I'll get on with your first winter 2018-19 update in a moment. Just to say that it could be quite a long video, so you can't watch it all in one go. Don't worry, it will be kept on the website indefinitely later on today. This video will be placed on the winter updates forecast page. There will be a written summary that goes with it as well, just going over everything that we discuss in the video. So if you can't watch it all in go, you can come back and watch the video on demand whenever you want, and also have a read of the written summary. Big thank you to James Acril for getting a lot of this together for us in terms of the analogues and also the solar tracker. So as ever, I can't do long range updates as we do now at Anomaly without James's input. So big thank you to James, and really just enjoy the video. I hope you find it interesting and informative. Here we go again with another season of winter updates. And with that, I think we better get on with it. So we're going to start off by having a look at sea surface temperature anomalies in the Atlantic and the Pacific. I want to deal with the Pacific first of all. So this is the latest sea surface temperature anomaly map from NOAA. And in the Pacific Ocean, there's 2 areas we're interested in particular. We've got the Northern Pacific up here, and we're also interested in the ENSO region. Now, in terms of the Northern Pacific, let's deal with that first of all. Assuming a lot of people watching this are going to want a cold winter. So a lot of the phraseology is going to be in the form of what is good if you want a cold winter. Of course, some people will be watching this may won't want a cold winter, and I'm not sort of favouring any particular outcome. Personally, I'm just catering to the majority of the people that will be watching this video. So if you want a cold winter, what you really want to see for the Northern Pacific is this area going colder than average. You want to see a blue, colder than average sea surface temperature anomaly appearing here in the northeastern quadrant of the Pacific Ocean. Over the past few years, although last year was an exception, but over the past few years we have generally been quite warm up there in the northern part of the Pacific Ocean. And it is associated with some of those milder winters that we had kind of in the middle of this decade, so sort of 2013-14, 2014-15, 2015-16. I think many of those years had warmer than average sea surface temperature anomalies up there in that northeastern part of the Pacific Ocean. And when that happens, it can kind of like send the jet stream on a northwest-southeast trajectory through America, which brings cold. It's good news for cold if you're in the north and the northeast of America. It brings cold air down to northern and northeast America. But as that cold air with the jet stream hits the warm waters of the Atlantic Ocean, North Atlantic Ocean, it kind of blows up the jet stream, and so that can enable cyclogenesis. So one of the things we look for is to see if we can get things a bit colder than average up there. At the moment, it is quite a bit warmer than average. Now, in terms of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, this is a real puzzle. What's going on here? We've got the ENSO region just there, the equatorial Pacific Ocean. If you've been keeping up to date with the ENSO updates at Gazovis, you'll know that the storyline through the past few months has been that the modelling has been consistently wanting to take us into an El Nino event through this late summer and into the autumn. Now, I've been looking and looking for this El Nino event. I really have been looking for it all summer, and I just can't really see it. We've got these cooler than average, albeit they're not particularly widespread, but we have got some slightly cooler than average sea surface temperature anomalies there through the western part of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. So that certainly goes against an El Nino, which of course is a warming of the equatorial Pacific Ocean. In this sort of central western part, yes, it's a little bit warmer there, but nothing particularly out of the ordinary, you would say. That is a very clear sea surface temperature anomaly signal to be at ENSO neutral. There is no sign of an El Nino event. If it was in an El Nino event, this kind of red area that we have here in the northwestern part of the Atlantic Ocean, just there, if we're going to have an El Nino, we would see those red and orange colours being here across the equatorial Pacific Ocean. There is no sign of that at the moment, and yet the CFS V2 is still very, very keen on taking us into an El Nino event. So this is where we're starting off at right now in terms of the ENSO region. So we are very close to ENSO neutral. We've got the dates on the bottom of the chart and the temperature anomalies along the side. To be in an El Nino, you've got to be above half a degree above average. 1 to 1.5 degrees above average will be sort of moderate El Nino strength. 1.5 to 2 degrees above average will be strong El Nino territory, and then 2.5 degrees, 2 to 2.5 degrees or more above average, and you're going into Super Nino territory, such as we had in 2015, 2016. So, I mean, we're starting off at ENSO neutral, quite obviously, around here, around or just a little bit under half a degree above average. The CFS wants to rapidly lift this up. That is a very rapid temperature rise of around a degree, or perhaps a bit more than a degree, going up to around 1.5 degrees above average, reaching moderate El Nino strength by October to November. Now, at the start of September, there's no sign of that happening at the moment. What I would say about this forecast from CFS V2 is that these blue lines just here, they are the more recent members of the CFS ensemble, and they're not going up as fast. You'll notice they are still reaching, generally they're still reaching El Nino territory, but they're doing so at a slower rate compared to the black dash line, which is kind of like the ensemble mean. So it could possibly be that those blue lines there are just at the start of the CFS beginning to backtrack. When we look at this next week, we may well find this black dash line is pulled down a bit, and over the next few weeks we might find this black dash line gets pulled further and further down, and so in the end we may never actually reach El Nino threshold. It will be very interesting to see, and we'll know within around a month whether we are going to have an El Nino at the end of this year. Now, the reason we look at this is because El Nino primarily affects the southern hemisphere. So it is primarily a driver for Australia, for South America, for Indonesia, some parts of Asia. But it does also have impacts on North America. We're downstream from North America, so obviously if whatever is impacted wherever in North America will have a knock-on effect through the Atlantic and into Europe as well. The difference, though, is that the effects you get in America from an El Nino tend to be uniform. They tend to happen time after time after time, which is the southern parts of the states. It tends to get quite cold. For western states, it tends to get very wet during an El Nino. For northern and eastern states, it varies on the exact position of the El Nino, of the warming of the equatorial Pacific Ocean, because you can get either an eastern-based El Nino, which is where the sea surface temperature is the highest towards Peru, or a central-based El Nino, which we call a Madoki. We'll discuss this much more as we get further into the videos. I don't want to overwhelm you with this first update. But essentially, the effects you get from an El Nino tends to be quite uniform for America, but over in Europe, the effects tend to be not uniform. So they'll vary from event to event. Of course, we will discuss this much more through reanalysis and analogues later in the winter updates. But the basic message is that the stronger the El Nino gets, the more chance we've got really is of coming out with a mild winter. If the ENSO event is weak, and this is the same is true for La Nina as well, if it's weak or moderate, then it doesn't rule out the chance of getting colder conditions in the UK and Europe. But if the El Nino, and same true for La Nina, if they get strong or reach Super Nino territory, then basically it's nearly always curtains for a cold winter in Europe. So we'll discuss that much more over the next few weeks. Of course, we will continue to monitor what's happening in the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Something else that's going away from an El Nino is the SOI. This is the Southern Oscillation Index. So this is an index. This is from the Bureau of Meteorology, by the way. It's an index that's reflecting the atmospheric pressures in the Southern Ocean between Darwin and Tahiti. So we've got Tahiti just there, and their air pressures in this column, and then we've got Darwin just here, and their air pressures in that column. So when the SOI is in its negative phase, when you've got negative numbers here, such as we have here on the 28th of August, we're down to minus 4.98, that tells you that the atmosphere is in an El Nino type setup. But when the SOI is positive, and we had a positive number for the 1st of September, just there at 10.82, when the SOI is positive, the atmosphere in the Southern Ocean will be reflecting a La Nina, and of course that will be going away from the possibility of an El Nino developing through the equatorial Pacific Ocean. Now this graph is quite interesting. This is telling us the trend of the SOI. So back at the start of August, it was actually positive, weekly positive with the SOI. So the atmospheric state at the beginning of August was reflective of a La Nina. You'll notice that through August we have in fact been dropping the SOI into negative territory. So the atmosphere through particularly the second half of August has gone into a weekly El Nino setup. Again, we've got the values along the side and the dates along the bottom. So during the end of the third week of August, we actually went down to around -7 with the SOI, indicated by that red line. But you'll notice that over the last few days, the SOI has actually started to trend upwards. It's actually started to recover from that negative trend. Now, the trend isn't linear. You'll notice what happens is that we get a big drop and then we'll level off, and then we'll get another drop and we'll level off and maybe tick up slightly, then another drop, and then maybe tick up slightly, and then another drop, and each drop should be bigger than the one before it. But that's quite a big rise actually in the SOI from there to go to there. It's only a few days worth of numbers, but it does kind of tell you that even from an atmospheric point of view, from Southern Oscillation Index point of view, this is not a clear-cut switch into an El Nino event by any means. We've really got to get on with this now. It's very late in the year to get an ENSO event going, so I'm not totally ruling out the chance of an El Nino or even a central-based Madoki El Nino in the final quarter 2018. But if it's going to happen, it's going to have to get on with it. We're going to have to see definitive signs of this through September. At the moment, I'm just not seeing it, but we will wait and see. Now, in terms of what's happening in the Atlantic Ocean, so this is the Northern Atlantic Ocean just here, we have got quite an interesting sea surface temperature anomaly setup, actually. We've got this colder than average area to the southwest of Greenland, and then we've got this much warmer area here over towards Newfoundland and heading down in towards the northeastern coast of the United States. So that's quite a stark anomaly. We're going to have to go back through past years and see which years kind of tallies up with that, because it is quite an unusual anomaly that we've got there, and a big contrast in temperatures over what is actually quite a relatively small area in terms of an oceanic area. That's a relatively small area and a big contrast in temperature. Now, in the tropical Atlantic, things are warming up, actually. So these are our sea surface temperature anomalies down in the tropical Atlantic. If I show you how they were looking back at the start of June, they were looking quite cold down in the tropical Atlantic. So the NAO forecast was based on this sort of setup with this horseshoe shape of cold from south of Greenland down to the tropics. And that horseshoe shape of cold, if it occurs in the winter, will enhance the chance of a positive NAO through winter. Won't guarantee a positive NAO, but it enhances the chance of a positive NAO. But at the moment, actually, those sea surface temperature anomalies are warming up quite a bit in the tropics. So we've lost most of that blue area, and in fact some areas are actually a little bit warmer than average now in the tropical Atlantic Ocean, and that might start to get the hurricane activity going for this season. For negative NAO, we're looking to see if we can get a tripole. So we want it to turn warmer there, we want it to turn cooler here, and then we want it to be warmer down there. So we get the three distinct bands of warm over cool over warm. We haven't got that, quite obviously, at the moment, but certainly the tropical Atlantic has warmed up quite a bit from where it was back at the start of the summer. Warmth in the tropical Atlantic is one of the things I look for to help us with the chance of a of the Atlantic being less of a player, if you like. So, and along the same lines of what's happening in the tropical Atlantic, this is the 2018 Atlantic hurricane season page from Wikipedia. We'll be keeping a close eye on this during this season of winter updates. So the scores on the doors at the moment look like this in terms of the 2018 Atlantic hurricane season. We have had 6 total depressions. We've had 6 total storms. We've had only two hurricanes, and we've had 0, that is no, major category 3 or above hurricanes. So it has been a very, very quiet start to the 2018 Atlantic tropical storm and hurricane season. But with those sea surface temperature anomalies warming up there through the tropical Atlantic, we may start to see things beginning to liven up through September. Although we had a very quiet start to this season, we might start to see things beginning to pick up in terms of the hurricane season. The reason we look at this is that hurricanes essentially are distributing warm air via the storm, via the hurricane. The Earth is distributing warm air from the tropics and dumping it into the pole. Essentially, it's transporting heat around the northern hemisphere. And when you get a lot of hurricanes dumping a lot of warmth into the North Pole, later on there can be a connection back to an increased risk of blocking. A lot of our colder winters do seem to coincide with more active hurricane season. Of course, last year was a great example of that. Had a very active hurricane season, 2017, which was followed by a colder winter for 2017-18. Wasn't desperately cold winter in its own terms, but it was certainly colder winter compared to those that had gone before. So we will be keeping a very, very close eye on the 2018 hurricane season, and we'll be seeing how that progresses Right, QBO next, quasi-biennial oscillation. So we are in the easterly phase of the QBO. We went into the easterly phase of the QBO in the last stages of last year. So when we was doing last year's winter updates, a big factor with those winter updates and ultimately with the winter forecast was the developing easterly QBO. Now, that easterly QBO has continued through 2018, and we are still, as I do this on the 1st of September 2018, we are still in the easterly phase of the QBO. And on this chart, the QBO is depicted by the white areas, or the easterly QBO is depicted by the white areas. Conversely, the westerly QBO is depicted by these darker, grayer areas. Now, what the QBO is doing, and it's very complicated to explain, so I'll just say in very broad terms that the QBO is a reflection of the strength of the zonal westerlies, essentially. So when you're in the easterly phase of the QBO, quasi-biennial oscillation, such as we are at the moment, the zonal westerlies are weakened, particularly through the tropics. It's primarily a drive that we look at for the tropics, but the same is true for the whole of the northern hemisphere, basically. So in an easterly QBO, the zonal westerlies will be weakened. In a westerly QBO, the zonal westerlies will be strengthened. Now, we're expecting to go into the westerly phase of the QBO towards the end of this year. It may have started during August. We haven't got the data in yet for August. So this chart from NOAA is showing each individual month's QBO numbers. That's 2018 just there. So, for example, January 2018 came out with a QBO number of minus 19.02. Quite clear in an easterly QBO during January 2018. You see all these minus numbers continuing here through the year, in fact strengthening, so that the final number we've had so far is for July, which came out at minus 29.10. That was the most easterly QBO July month that we've had going back to the early 1950s. This will be August number just here. We haven't yet had August number, but there are rumours that August has seen quite a sharp lift up in the QBO. Still negative, so still within the easterly phase of the QBO, but not as negative as it was in July. And that, if it's true, that will almost certainly be the start of the reversal of the QBO into the westerly phase. So that's going to be August number just there. This will be September's just here. This will be October's just there. I would expect all three of those to still be negative. It does take a little time to get the QBO from its easterly to its westerly phase. So I would expect the next 3 months, August, September, October, to be negative numbers. The interesting numbers will be November and December just here. They may well go positive. But what tends to happen is that at the start, they will only be very slightly positive. So let's look at 2012, 2013, show you what's likely to happen. So you see that through 2012, we have pretty much out the whole year these negative numbers, only very gradually waning. We go into 2013, still quite negative in January, at minus 6.07, but by February we're at minus 1.23. But the positive westerly QBO number, first one, appears in March of 2013 at plus 2.85, and then the next one is April at 8.39. So those two are positive, but just because they've gone into positive numbers doesn't mean that the atmosphere will necessarily be reflecting that switch in the QBO. And in fact, in March 2013, even though the QBO was very slightly westerly at 2.85 in terms of the number, actually it was an incredibly blocked month. We had tremendous amounts of northern blocking, and there was no sort of atmospheric response in March of 2013 to the beginning of that westerly QBO, and probably very little in April either. It probably wouldn't have been until sort of May and then on into the summer months of 2013 that the atmosphere would properly have been reflecting that westerly QBO. So there will always be a bit of a time lag between beginning to switch a QBO and getting an atmospheric response. So if these 3 months just here, August, September, October, are negative, and then we finally come out with a positive number, so it'll be these 3 months just there, they're negative, and then we finally come out with a positive number in November and then go a bit more positive in December. Nevertheless, the atmosphere could still be reflecting the ECQBO. So it might, and we're going to have to look at this through reanalysis and analogues to really confirm it, but it might be that the QBO will favour more of a front-loaded, colder winter at the beginning of the winter, perhaps, and then maybe going a bit milder later. But of course, we'll have to wait and see about that. Now, this is something new that I've decided to throw in for this year's update. So we're going to be keeping an eye on this throughout this autumn of updates. So you'll see this every week. This is from weatheriscool.com, and you find the link to weatheriscool.com on the links page. This is, I'll talk you through this because it's quite complicated. So essentially, this is a graph that is showing us the strength of the zonal flow over the North Pole at 10 HPA. And it's also a forecast chart as well. So let's deal with the beginning of the chart first of all, which is where we are right now. So we've got our numbers on the side, our dates are along the bottom. That's August just there. And this is where we're starting off at in September just here. So this is going to be September's month, that will be October's month, that will be November's month, that will be December's month, and so on. That will be January, that will be February. So this is where we're starting off at right now. This line just here is the trend. So of course we're going into the autumn and the winter. You expect the trend of the zonal flow to be strengthening. You expect the zonal flow at 10 HPA, which is kind of like the top level of the atmosphere in the North Pole. You expect the zonal winds to be strengthening up there throughout the season, and that's depicted by that dark black line just there. And then, of course, we've got this blue line just here. That's showing us how this season is progressing. Very early in the season, of course, so we're only up to September. We're about on trend. That's normally what you expect to see. The green area just there is kind of like the GFS and its ensembles. So that doesn't get us very far. It only gets us 2 weeks worth of data, although interestingly, going up to the middle of September, the zonal wind at 10 HPA is a little bit weaker than average. It's a little bit under the trend in terms of what the GFS ensembles are showing. The rest of the coloured lines, though, are being forecasting or are showing what the CFS V2, the long-range seasonal CFS V2, is forecasting in terms of the strength of the zonal winds. There is one more line I'm going to explain. That's this red dashed line just here. That's last year. So you'll see what happened with the zonal winds last year is that through sort of November and December, it was about on trend. And then we had a bit of a cool down though through December, or we had a little bit of a weakening, I should say, of the zonal winds through December, before things really took off late December and into January. We went through a very, very strong phase of zonality, very strong zonal flow got going through January, and that lasted into February as well. You'll notice the red dash line then crashes through February. That's when we had the sudden stratospheric warming during the middle of February 2018. That crashes, and it is a real crash, it crashes the zonal winds at 10 HPA. And then, of course, we got the blocking going, and we know what happened then. The end of February became exceptionally severely cold. I hope I'm explaining this okay, you can follow it. Let's go back to these coloured lines. These lines just here, the pink lines and the blue lines, they're the most important lines because they are the forecasts in terms of the strength of the zonal winds over the North Pole. They are the forecast from the CFS V2. You'll notice that generally these zonal winds are being forecast to be weaker than average. So remember the black dash line here, that's the trend. That's where things should be trending through the winter, with the zonal flow becoming increasingly strong as you get the temperature contrast between the pole and the tropics. The mid-latitudes should get increasingly strong zonal flow. You'll notice the pink and the blue lines are generally throughout October and particularly evident through November and also into December as well. It's these 2 months just here that are quite interesting. November through to December. Just there, that's November, that's December. You'll notice that these coloured lines are generally trending quite significantly under average. So it tells us that CFS-V2, the long-range model, is depicting the zonal flow to be weaker. Now, as we get towards the very end, and we can only go up to the end of December just there, so that would kind of like be New Year's Eve on December 31st. And by then, we are seeing signs that these coloured lines are beginning to lift up a little bit, perhaps, but still generally a little bit under trend, other than that blue line. So it does show that CFS-V2 at the moment is forecasting the zonal westerlies, the zonal winds at 10 HPA, to be weakened through the end of the year. That could back up what I was just talking about in terms of the easterly QBO possibly still being a player through November and maybe even December as well. Another way I should just show you what enhanced zonal flow means. So this is from 10th of February last year. This is from 10th of February this year, I should say, 2018. So these blues and purples, that's the polar vortex up there over the North Pole. So on the chart I was just looking at, we would have a strong zonal flow. We would be trending above average. So if we go back here on this chart, we would be showing us where we was around this period with that strong zonal flow depicted by the red dash line. I'll show you what happens when the zonal westerly is weakened. So you'll see that very quickly as we go through February, those blues and purples kind of lifted out. They begin to turn green, which tells that the zonal flow is weakening. Still hanging on though, still keeping those blues and purples going over Greenland to some degree, but very gradually the colours are changing from green to yellow, and there we go, we've gone to the end of February, and actually we've lost very quickly, it happens very quickly, we have lost those blues and purples, we've replaced them with greens and yellows. That's blocking appearing over the pole, and of course that happens partly as a result of the zonal flow at 10 HPA, the zonal winds just crashing. So that's what was going on there. We went from the blue and the purple colours indicating the strong polar vortex that would have had going on around there, and replace it with the green and the yellow colours indicating the high pressure blocking that we would have had going on just there by the end of February. We've got that really intense northern blocking going on over the over Greenland and the Arctic as well. Right, so we'll be looking at that a lot more over the next few weeks, see what CFS-V2 is forecasting for those zonal winds at 10 HPA. That's a new element we're adding into the winter updates this year. You have to let me know what you think, whether you want to carry on seeing that. I'm certainly going to carry on running with it for the rest of this season of updates. Something else completely different now. We're on to solar activity. So this is the solar disk on our side this day from solarham.net. Completely spotless sun. There are no sunspots on the solar disk at all. Solar activity obviously is at very low levels, and Solarham is forecasting that solar activity is going to stay at very low levels as well. And this is what you've been waiting for, I'm sure. This is the Gasworthy's first winter update solar activity tracker sent through by our good friend James Atwill. Big thank you to James for keeping the solar tracker updated for us. We've got a whole year's worth of solar activity here. So we go back to when we did the first winter update last year. We still see that, but we had that huge spike in solar activity and sunspot numbers at the beginning of September 2017. But very quickly through the autumn last year, we crashed the solar activity. And we've generally been at a very low level of solar activity ever since, going right way through the winter and on into the spring, and on into the summer, though we did tick it up a little bit through the earlier part of the summer. Been at a very low level of activity, and then we dropped to an even lower level of solar activity in the second half of the summer. We really did crash those sunspot numbers, and so the orange line depicting each day's worth of sunspots, you can see that we had around I think it's around a month, maybe a little bit less than a month, but around a month of virtually no sunspots whatsoever. Just that little one just there spoiled things, but basically we managed to get around a month of totally spotless conditions on the sun. Over the past few days we have had a bit of a tick up in the past couple of weeks, but bear in mind this is still at a very low level of solar activity. Really, but now, and it's a job to see this over on the very side of the chart, we've actually started flatlining again. So we do see that already our trend lines, which are the thick green and the thick red lines, are just beginning to edge back downwards once again. So activity, again, it's going to a very low level. Well, we are anyway at a very low level of activity, but we're going into spotless condition once again. We're getting ever closer to solar minimum. I think this will be the solar minimum winter of of solar cycle 24, I should say, 2018-19 should be the solar minimum winter of this solar cycle. And so we're going to have to look through reanalysis. We'll be focusing on this in a future update. We will look to see what the true solar minimum winters of the past solar cycles could mean for this winter. But definitely a really low level of solar activity. And although we have had a little bit of a tick up in activity over the past couple of weeks, we are now back at spotless condition once again and expecting to remain so. Big thanks to James for updating the solar activity tracker for us, and we'll be keeping a close eye on that over the next few weeks and through the rest of winter updates. Right, so this is how things are looking in terms of Arctic sea ice and snow cover extent. Let's just see how long I've been talking. So we're over 30 minutes and I've got a lot to cram in, so I'm going to try and rush through this a little bit. So very little snow cover across Russia, Siberia at the moment, as you would expect really. It's very early, it's still only the 1st of September. We've got a few little white patches just there, but nothing much. Eventually this is going to fill up with snow, and we'll be seeing through the course of this season of updates how quickly that snow line pushes westwards across Siberia and Russia. But at the moment, very little to see either in Russia or over Scandinavia. This yellow area is Arctic sea ice. You can see that we have lost quite a lot of Arctic sea ice again this year. This is from the National Ice Centre. By the way, this is how things were looking last year when we did the first winter update last year around this time of year. We had a few little white patches, but nothing of significance. In terms of Arctic sea ice, that was the situation last year. This is the situation now. So it is actually very close in terms of total ice coverage. Just the areas that are covered with ice, the areas that have lost their ice, are a little bit different. So this chart that we're going to go over to just here is the Arctic Sea Ice News and Analysis chart. This is the CH Arctic Interactive Sea Ice Graph. And what we're looking at here is the trend and where we are for 2018. So this grey line just here is the trend in terms of Arctic sea ice. Obviously, we're in the melting phase of the season for Arctic sea ice, so we are trending ever downwards. This orange line just here, that is 2018. Now, we can actually go back to 1979 bits, but I haven't got time to do that for this video. We may do that in a subsequent update. But I'm going to go back to 2006, and then we'll run through. So I'm going to show you 2006's melt season. And you see we are under 2006. This pink line just here is the ice, total ice that we lost through 2006. So we're under that for 2018. That's 2007 just there. That was a bit of a crash type year in 2007. We are a little bit above 2007, but reasonably close to it. That's 2008, very much on a par with 2008. This is 2009, so a little bit less ice this year compared to 2009's melt season. That's 2010, on a par with 2010. I think that's 2011, again on a par. Many of these numbers are coming out quite close to one another from 2006. This is 2012 though. This is the death spiral. So this green dashed line here, this is the lowest Arctic ice extent that we've had, certainly within the satellite era. And we are above the death spiral. We are above 2012. So we haven't had a death spiral of Arctic sea ice again this year. I don't think we will now. That's 2013, so quite close. 2013. Maybe actually we're a little bit underneath 2013 and 2014. Fielding 2015 as well. That's 2016, so we're close to 2016, and that's 2017. We are close to 2017. Let's try and get rid of some of those lines. So get rid of these years, and I want to focus on 2012, and then I want to focus on last year. So you can see that actually in terms of Arctic size, we are very, very close to where we was at this point last year, so very similar melt season, which is a big melt season. Haven't had a death spike, we haven't gone down to this sort of level where we're at with the green dash line, but it is a big melt season that we've had here this year so far, and I would expect we'll continue along the same lines of 2017 again for this year's melt season. Not a death spiral, but again another big melt season has taken place. And I think there we will pause the video. We've done 40 minutes. We'll pause the video. We're going to come back with some analogues. I'm just going to get a drink of water. Give me throat a little bit of a water, and we'll meet back in a couple of minutes' time, and we'll go through some analogues, looking at this summer. So I want to focus a little bit on this summer and what it could mean for the winter, and we'll meet back in around 2 seconds' time. Go get yourself a cup of tea and some biscuits, and we'll meet back very, very shortly. Okay, we're back. We're ready to resume. So I talked for 40 minutes, gone through sea surface temperature anomalies, solar activity, Arctic sea ice, and all of that kind of thing. And now we're going to finish off by having a look at some analogues. And for this first update, I want to focus on the summer that we've just had, and see if we can try and find some summers that were similar and what the winters were like that followed those summers. Now, I haven't got time to go through the table that explains how we've come by these years. Essentially what we've looked at is the central England temperature and the precipitation, total precipitation for June, for July, and for August as well. And we tried to find the closest matches to this year. Now, there is only really one year that has been very closely, completely matched for June, July, and August in terms of the way the CET and the temperature essentially and the precipitation has played out on a month-by-month basis. I'll show you that year when we get to it. But you'll know from, if you watch the autumn forecast actually, which year that is. But we have got a few other years that are quite close. We think they're quite close to the summer of 2018. So this is the CET from Hadley. It doesn't show precipitation, but it does show you that we have had a very hot summer. Of course, we know this is the 5th hottest summer on record, with all summer months coming out warmer than average. But August was cooler than June and July as well. So, or in terms of a trend anyway, actually August was warmer than June, but the trend was down. It was down in terms of August compared to the warming trend that we had in June and in July as well. So the first summer, and it was appearing a lot in our summer analogues for the autumn forecast, the first summer we've been able to match up for this year is the summer of 1868. This is how the winter of 1868, 1869 panned out. This is a shocker if you want a cold winter. It's the warmest winter in terms of CET anyway on record. It has big area of above average heights to our south. It has deep below average heights up to the northwest, and we bring through this very strong zonal southwesterly flow as well. The next summer was 1870. This is a very different winter. The summer of 1870, 1871 looks pretty cold. Look at this. We have below average heights over to the south of the country, and we have a blocking signal up to the north. And we bring in these really cold east or northeasterly winds as well. Then we go through to our next summer. So we go through to the summer of 1921. This is how the winter of 1921-1922 looked. Very unsettled and mild winter. So certainly no trend at the moment. We've got a very mild winter here for the winter of 1921-1922. We do try and get a little bit of high pressure going up to the northeast, but that doesn't really do a great deal for us to get cold conditions. This is a mild and wet winter in 1921-1922. The next summer that we picked out is 1933. This is how the winter of 1933-1934 played out. Anticyclonic winter with high pressure centred over the country. Quite a cold winter in the winter of 1933-1934 and very dry. The next summer we picked out is 1955. Remember, most of these aren't perfect matches, but they're the summers that we think are the closest we can find to the summer of 2018. So this is the winter of 1955-1956. This is a cold signal overall with below average heights to the east and a blocking signal up to the northwest. The interesting thing about this winter is it's generally quite mild till the end of January, and then it turns severely cold in February of 1956. Then we've got the summer of 1976, and that is the closest match in terms of the temperature anomalies, the way they've played out through this summer, and also in terms of precipitation anomalies. It's the closest match to the summer of 2018, although obviously it's a hotter summer and a drier summer overall. This is how the winter of 76-77 comes out, with a blocking signal up to the north and below average heights down to the south. This is a front-loaded winter, so we have cold conditions in December up to the early part of January, and then it gets milder later in the winter. Actually, we finish up with quite a mild February in the winter of 1976-1977. 1983, we think, has also been a very similar summer to 2018. This is how the winter of 1983-1984 comes out, with below average heights over to the north country, above average heights in the Atlantic. A very westerly, northwesterly winter. So although it's quite an Atlantic-driven winter, it is actually quite a cold late winter anyway, with the air coming out of Canada and Greenland, bringing some unusually cold zonal flows. 1994 also, we think, has been quite a similar summer to 2018. This is how the winter of 1994-1995 comes out, with a deep area of below average heights to the north and above average heights to the south. This is a mild and zonal winter, no getting away from that one. So I don't think really we've got a trend at this point. 1996 is our next winter, so we think the summer of 1995 has been quite similar to this summer. But what I would say is that August 1995 was actually the hottest month of that summer, whereas this year August has kind of collapsed the summer a little bit. So there are differences there, but there's also similarities. This is how the winter of 95-96 looks. It's a cold winter, of course, overall, with the high pressure up to the north and the low pressure down to the south, and quite a strong easterly flow coming through as well. 2003 also has been a similar summer, we think, although again the hottest temperatures actually were in August of 2003, so that's a little bit different to this year. But again, we have the above average heights winter of 2003-04 out to the west, below average heights to our east. That looks like it should be quite a cold winter. Actually, it wasn't particularly cold, and the air generally was coming around this ridge, down across the country. So although the high pressure is out to the northwest of us, the air is originating generally from the Atlantic. And then the final summer is 2006. Again, that's played out very closely to 2018. This is how the winter 2006-07 comes out, with above average heights to our south, below average heights are up to the north, and we bring through that strong zonal westerly flow as well. So that's a mild but relatively dry winter, certainly for the south. It is a wetter winter in the north. Putting it all together, so November actually looks quite interesting. November has quite a blocking signal there, particularly focused around Iceland. So you could envisage some cold air actually in quite a few of these Novembers. Cold weather perhaps favoured with these summer to winters for November, but December looks like it turns into a mild wet sort of type month, with below average heights over the UK and much of Western Europe as well. So that just looks like a very mild and wet month. January's combined looks like that. Again, quite an unsettled but not overly cold signal, although you'll notice a blocking feature is favoured to be away to our north of us over the western northwest of Russia. But essentially this is still quite a mild signal, unsettled signal for the Januaries as well. But then the Februaries get more interesting. We find that by the Februaries, we're actually bringing back the above average heights close to Greenland and Iceland. The below average heights are going south. And so that would be favouring something a bit colder turning up in the Februaries of these years. And then by the time we get through to the Marches, look at this. It looks like we go pretty cold again, with below average heights down to our south and a strong blocking signal up to the north. So it looks like what happens with a lot of these winters is that we start off really quite cold in the Novembers, then kind of the main part of the winter, December through January, sees that cold going away, and it turns wetter mild. But then it looks like through the Februaries and particularly through the Marches, the cold conditions could return, and return big time by the Marches. That's a very strong blocking signal in all. In terms of the winters all combined, this is how we come out with above average heights to the north, and then we get below average heights to our south. So these are relatively unsettled and probably not overly cold winters, although there is a blocking signal primarily down to February, though much less blocking through the Decembers and through the Marches. Then the last thing I wanted to show you for this first update, I know it's been a very long video, but the first one always is when we've got to explain everything that we're talking about. So sorry about that, and a big thank you to everyone for sticking with it. The last thing I wanted to show you is the 500 millibar height anomaly reanalysis for August. This is really how August has played out. We are a couple of days short. This takes us from the 1st through to the 29th of August. You see that August, in terms of the 500 millibar flow, has had above average heights to the south, with below average heights up to the north, and it has been a pretty westerly month, much more Atlantic driven compared to the June and July 500 millibar height anomaly, if I was to show you that, which I won't. So that is how August looks in terms of its reanalysis, August 2018. When we did the autumn forecast, the closest matches we could find to this August were August 1990. That's the reanalysis for August 1990. Again, you see the signal for the above average heights to be through the Atlantic into the south of the UK and the north of France, with below average heights just there around Iceland. The other close match has been was August 2009. Again, really quite similar, with the above average heights to the south and also to the southwest and the southeast of the country, but we have the below average heights up to the north, to the northwest, and again a bit of a westerly type signal in August 2009. Which do you think is the closest? So again, that is 2018 up to the 29th of August. That's how August 2018 comes out. That's 1990. So that's how those years look. And then that's 2009. That's August 2009 compared to this year. You'll have to let me know through the comments. I like it when it's interactive with these winter updates. You have to let me know through the comments which of those 2 years, 1990, 2009, you think are closest to 2018. Anyway, I think they're both reasonably close, and so just to finish off, just for a bit of fun, I wanted to show you how the winters of 1990, 1991, and also 2009-10 played out. So this is November 1990, and it had, I shouldn't be showing you this really, it's a bit outrageous, but it has it has above average heights out to the northwest around Greenland, Iceland, below average heights to the east, and we pull down the wind from a northerly direction. So it's dry but quite cold in November 1990. December 1990 looks like that, with above average heights out to the west and also to the northeast, below average heights up to the north and also to the south. So it's a real messy month, but overall not particularly cold in December 1990, although it did have quite a cold episode and some famous snow through the Midlands during the earlier part of December 1990. That's January 1991. Below average heights out to the west, above average heights across central and also northern parts of Europe. Anticyclonic, dry, cold, frosty month in January 1991. And then this is February 1991. The big freeze of February 1991 is caused by this Scandinavian high, with these easterly winds screaming in from the Urals, bringing bitterly cold air. And then that is March 1991. Again, back to that anticyclonic signal that we had in January, really. So it's a relatively mild month, actually, in March 1991, but pretty dry and pretty quiet. Overall, this is how the reanalysis looks for the winter of 1990-1991, with the high pressure above average heights around Scandinavia, primarily down to February, of course, below average heights out to west. So it's a rather anticyclonic, pretty cold winter overall, but particularly the cold is focused on February. And then, of course, the other close match in terms of August was 2009, so I'll just leave you with that. November 2009, very wet month with below average heights in the Atlantic, really wet Atlantic-driven month. Notice that high pressure, though, up to the northeast in November 2009. That is December 2009, cold month, blocking over Greenland and over the northern latitudes, proper northern blocking there, with the below average heights underneath it. We bring in those bitterly cold easterly winds in December 2009. January 2010, really cold month as well. Again, we have a negative NAO, very negative NAO, with below average heights of a jet stream down there. And then we've got that intense blocking around Greenland, particular during January 2009. That's a very cold and wintry month. February 2009 also has a very strong blocking signal, but it's a little bit more towards the Canadian side of the Arctic, which means that America actually turns even colder during February 2009. It's a really cold month there, but for us it isn't quite as cold, but even so, still wintry episodes, wintry outbreaks in February 2010. And then finally, March 2010 looks like that. We still keep that blocking signal going, would you believe? Even into March, it's still there, but it's not quite lined up right to give us a notably cold month. The below average heights are down there. And so we have a little bit more of an Atlantic flow during March 2010. But well, still some cold episodes, I think. That's the overall reanalysis for the winter of 2009-10, with a below average heights again to our south, and that strong blocking signal up to the north. Very cold winter in 2009-2010. And that rounds up the first winter 2018-19 update. If you've enjoyed this update, can you please consider becoming a patron for Gazovis? This is Gazovis' Patreon page. If you would like to give us an ongoing monthly donation, you can come here and sign up for a Patreon account and then pledge any amount of money you would like, from $1 a month upwards, to Gazovis, and that will allow you to become a patron for Gazovis. Alternatively, if you would prefer to just make a one-off donation, you can do it through the Gazovis PayPal page. This is it. This is PayPal page for Gazovis. So if you've got a PayPal account, very simply just sign into your account. You can then give us a monthly donation. And all donations are very, very gratefully received. You're helping us to pay for our website. You're helping us to keep content totally free of charge. We won't be going behind paywalls. We're going to keep the content completely free as you want it and need it. We just ask that if you can afford to make a donation to help fund the website, we're primarily ads funded. But if you can afford to give us a donation, either as a one-off donation through PayPal or an ongoing monthly donation through Patreon, we ask that please do that for Gazov. It's a big thank you to all of our patrons and donors. You'll get a shout out in the videos if you want one. Right, so we're closing in on an hour for the first winter update. It's been a very extended one. I knew it would be. The first one always is, because there's so much to explain as we go through the methodology. Hopefully we'll be able to shorten this down a little bit over the next few updates in the coming weeks. I hope you found it interesting and informative. If you've enjoyed this video, please click like on the video. Give us a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to the YouTube channel, and also, of course, if you can afford it, please give us a donation through Patreon and or PayPal. Right, so after 1 hour, that is the first Winter 2018-19 update in the can. That's done and dusted. This video will be placed on the Winter Updates and Forecast page with a written summary later on today. Probably get that up around 6 or 7 o'clock this evening. And I'm going to let it tick over to an hour, I think. So at 1 hour, all that remains is for me to say a big thank you to all of you for watching and for sticking with it through the hour. Big thank you to James as well for all of his input. And at 1 hour and 2 seconds, that's all for now. And thanks so much for watching.